All right, hello y'all. Hope you're all doing well. This is RJ, and special guest today. Some of you obviously recognize Vinny, cousin Vinny.
Yep.
Is thrilled to see him here. And if you followed the previous video, you'll recognize this place because we just had a wonderful ceremony here just a little bit ago, right, where we had a memorial type service, a ceremony, a meeting, great speakers, which included Vinny here was the keynote speaker. They asked me to speak as well. A lot of good folks, good food, merchandise. It was a wonderful experience. So we are here in Georgetown, Delaware. And you can see in the background here this beautiful memorial made possible by the Delaware Grays and also the UDC chapter.
Yep, that's Caleb Ross, United Daughters of the Confederacy, and the Delaware Grays STV. Mr. Jeff, Miss Laura, RJ, myself, and Ms. Deb were all keynote speakers, and we had a great time honoring our heritage and honoring the men in gray that served Delaware, as well as, you all look at the back of the stones, because this memorial, everything, the flags, the stones, the cenotaph, this is all one memorial, and it's just so beautiful. It's not overly huge, it's grand enough that there's so many components of it, and it honors not just the soldiers, but the civilians, the civilian POWs, or those who are working at the local office trying to fight for the South, more or less.
Thank you, and I got closer so we can hear your voice.
Perfect.
With this one. But
State flag of Delaware and the battle flag.
Yes. Delaware and the battle flag there, and I was explaining earlier, we know it's not, it's a variation of the battle flag. We can say it's called the Naval Jack, Rebel flag.
Army of Tennessee.
Exactly. But I did a live video earlier and went around, and on all four sides are the names of those folks from Delaware. What they estimate around 2,000 around. They say between 300 to 3,000, but most likely 2,000 from people from Delaware who left the state and to join the South.
That's right. They and right the fields down there. So where the beautiful museum is and the monument, there's a field across the road. And what makes this monument so historic is not only does it honor the Delawareans that fought, we keep adding names to this. So this monument is growing. Most monuments, they have the names on there and that's it. Nothing else is added for years and years. Every year at this memorial service, another name is added to that, block over there. Down that road on that field, during the war between the states, there was a group of men from Delaware that were more or less training and fighting to want to go to the South. Lincoln sent federal troops down, said break it up, knock it off. They all got together and they found a way to Virginia. Delaware was a very divided state. So the Caleb Ross, for example, Caleb Ross is the son of Governor Ross at that time during the war between the states. Governor Ross is already not liked. He's very Southern sympathetic. His plantation is still around in Delaware today. It's a museum. And he says, you know what, I'm gonna hightail it out of here so I don't get arrested. He takes a ship and he ends up going to England where he remains. His son, during the war, escapes to Virginia and dies before he sees combat of some bacterial disease, I think from like fleas or something. So he died fairly young, his son. It was sad. And the Ross family, again, very Southern sympathetic, more than just Copperheads. The son enlisted in the Confederate Army, and that's why the chapter is named after him, to honor his legacy. And the Delaware Grays has been around for a few years. The Caleb Ross was chartered in 2003, so they're just a little over 20 years old. And still here honoring our heritage, and we're proud of it. And we were so united today. We came together over good food, over prayer. RJ gave an amazing presentation. He is an incredible speaker. And of course, we're super grateful to have RJ because he goes out there to document our history. He's doing the unthinkable. How many authors just write about it? They write about history and that's it. RJ lives the cause. He goes out there. He does the field work that too few are willing to do. And he not only documents the past, because some of these monuments are no longer in existence for future generations to learn from what happened, but he documents the new monuments that go up as well as where they are now. And it's just invaluable because it's the real history. And y'all watching him are learning your history and it makes it fun. It's better than that nonsense on National Geographic.
Thank you. That's very kind of you to say, because I usually don't talk. I never do talk about myself. And but it was wonderful when I walked in this room and saw, hey, Vinny there. That's awesome.
Yes.
And by chance, we were just talking yesterday.
That's right.
We were talking about the new executive order that just came through. We just found out that was signed late last Thursday night, and the ramifications of that. And you know, like you said, great today. Great representation. Jeff was there, leader of the Delaware Grays, wonderful man. See him around different places. The entire camp, very wonderful people. Caleb Ross, UDC president, was here as well. A lot of other good folks. And the president of this Georgetown Historical Society right here that you see in the background. We just got a personal tour of there, very kind to pass a tour along, which include this building over here. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. But yeah, great. And I love that, just particularly see you here, because as you know, many of you know Vinny. He had those awesome videos on Monuments Across Dixie. We were both, you know, part of Monuments Across Dixie admins. Now, we both haven't contributed specifically to Monuments Across Dixie for a while, but Vinny had all those videos. And, you know, Facebook came out with a new policy that they were going to limit the live videos, and they were going to erase them after 30 days. And so Vinny, I just asked him, he's saved those videos so he can watch those, because they are very time critical. And I'll tell you what, when it comes to someone who understands the pulse, what's going on, his connections, more so, Vinny, far more than me, he has the connection, knows the internal workings between the SCV and the UDC, and an incredible advocate for the South. Always been a great example to everybody. Vinny, as you know, is the well, maybe you don't know, the leader of the New Jersey Flaggers, right? And you can talk about that. He's the one who would go up there to that, for example, that Confederate memorial that's up in New York, right? And pay respects up there and make sure it's flagged, make sure to give proper honor and respect out there. And he deals with a lot of you know, flack people. There's a lot of I would say leftists, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
My perspective, the Mayoist, who the council culture woke, who don't like to see that, right? They don't like to see these flags that you see flying in the background, which I remind everybody, to me and to Vinny, as American a flag as you can get, right? Representing the citizen soldiers who answered the call and did their duty to serve and protect and defend their homes and their families and their homeland, right? Doing what their forefathers had done, represent often.
Yeah, RJ's absolutely correct, and I always tell people, because my favorite thing is it's the left is also very bad outright. We go flagging up in New Jersey because New Jersey has a lot of ties to the Confederacy. There's, you know, buildings, street names, towns, monuments. We got 4 of them. A lot of Confederate graves. And I told my friend, you know, some might know Frankie, the Relentless Patriot. He's a member of Jersey Flaggers, member of the New Jersey SCV. Our New Jersey Flaggers was created for the sole purpose to unite people. SCV and UDC and OCR, they're all wonderful groups. What we did doing the Flaggers were an LLC. We were able to do something that a 501c3 can't. We can get involved politically, and we can get more active and not have to worry the same that a 501c3 would. So we had, you know, you have UDC members, OCR members, SCV members, and people who are not even affiliated with that, who joined the New Jersey Flaggers. We get together for obviously always Christ first, then family, then heritage. We support other organizations out there like the Virginia Flaggers, the SCV, the UDC. We donate to them, we buy stuff from them. I encourage my members as private citizens, you know, join those groups, get involved, do what you can do. And flagging is a big thing because it's not just standing out there, which we do. Confederate Flag Day. We were out in Morristown, New Jersey. That city in New Jersey has so many Confederate ties. And we are flagging outside the Washington headquarters and the Washington Monument because guess what, y'all? George Washington's family, though he never had direct children, his stepchildren and all that, had ties to the Confederacy. And he's a Virginian first, that idea of being a statesman. I've had people that we'd be out there flagging, they get this close to my face, hollering, cussing, yelling. And I remember I just said, God bless you. I told the guy, God bless you. And he turns around and said, there ain't no God. I said, well, I pray for you, sir. It's really sad to live your life like that. And like RJ said, we have a monument in New York, upstate New York. This monument came under attack in 2018. And it was a group of people that like-minded came together and we saved it. We prevented it from being destroyed, from being sandblasted, from being taken out of a cemetery. This was at a time when the whole thing was, remember, it was, oh, take your flags down, put them at a museum. This is a museum right here. Well, guess what? The Maoists, that's not okay. They don't want this stuff at a museum no more. They don't want it to exist. That was just their way of psychologically shaping us to slowly get rid of our heritage. And I said, you know what? We got to stop hiding behind flags. The first national flag matters. The Bonnie Blue matters as much as the battle flag, the second and third national, which also include the battle flag. So every year I bring a variety of Confederate flags, national battle flag, and I put a flag at all of those graves, about 55, at that circle, at that cemetery on Hastings-on-Hudson, and we do a memorial service. We sing Dixie, we sang Maryland, My Maryland one year, we sang I'm a Good Old Rebel. We are truly unreconstructed, and we're proud of our Southern roots, and we're showing them that we're, guess what, you're offended? Too darn bad, look the other way. A lot of things in life I don't like, but guess what? Free speech is all speech. And that's what matters. People were saying, oh, maybe you should get rid of the flag. Nope, that's part of that monument. The more that we put our foot down and say, no, I'm not bending in, this is my heritage, I stand behind that 110%, the quicker this nonsense ends. Because ever since we've been doing that in New York, we haven't heard one peep for them to want to remove that monument in that cemetery. Every year we use that monument, we have standing. And I tell people, you got memorials, use them. Go there, leave flags, leave flowers. Obviously, Confederate monument, only flags that are appropriate, state flag, CSA battle, or CSA national flags. And New Jersey flaggers, our motto was benevolent, historical, educational, and activism. And the activism part is what sets it apart from other groups, because we would lobby, we would go out there, we would explain this is why we need to do something. This is why we got to advocate for, better protection laws or something. And doing so, I met people. I met a gentleman who was from Greenville, South Carolina, just by sitting out there at my flag. Hey, do you know about the SCV? Do you want to get involved? And his response, he's 77 years young, was, it warms my heart to see that somebody all the way in New Jersey is proud of their roots. Thank you, young fella, for keeping our history alive. I had two other people approach me at the bar. I had my hat on, battle flag sweatshirt. Young lady, 23, she goes, I'm from Virginia, and you just gave me hope for New Jersey. Thank you for keeping our history alive. Nothing but positive. Only one time I got something negative was some socially awkward, probably lives in his mama's basement, guy that was in his early 20s with big glasses, big head, and he was going like this to me. And I said, oh, I wish I was in the land of cotton, old time. And I sang Dixie, and he just stormed off. And that's, you got to handle the haters, y'all. Educate them. Sing songs, patriotic songs. Say bless you. Bless your heart. That's all you got to say to them. And what I loved about today is you saw that people came from all over Delaware, New Jersey. We had people in the past come from Georgia, New York, and we all brought some food. We had raffle items. This is my go-to every year, and we need more people from Delaware. Come on out. Come on out from Maryland. Enjoy our history and heritage and learn something. Because every one of those names gets honored. And every one of those names has a story behind them.
Thank you. That's why we need to hear more from you, Vinny. And that's why I wish we had a chance to go tour America. So maybe someday.
Someday, hopefully in the near future, when my PhD's over and I'll have my office, I'll have the chance to be more independent. All I can say, no spoilers, that RJ and I will be working together in the near future together. We're going to be a dynamic duo because we are good at what we do and we're proud of our roots.
Love it. And so the last time I saw you was over there in Lexington, Virginia, right? And I tell you what, that was, I think, my 5th year in a row there. And what a wonderful occasion that was. Once again, that was for Lee Jackson Day. That was a state holiday there for a long time. And the Mayoist governor, Northam, decided to remove it. He says, well, to us, it doesn't make a difference. It's still Lee Jackson Day. They're still American heroes. They still need to be remembered. They were good, honorable men. And so for us, it doesn't matter. I don't care what that dude has to say. So we continued to, we had a great symposia. We had a lot of great speakers. I love that march through town. And then there was a flagging that you're spoken of. And that's what made me think of this. because I saw you out there flagging right out there at Washington Lee, right on the edge there.
Right there.
And then later on, right off the main street. And I love to be able to be out hanging out there and flagging with you for that time. I wish we could do that more often.
Me
really.
too.
And overall, yeah, like you mentioned, those are interesting stories of folks who get all uptight, but overwhelmingly very positive, right? Lexington, we know, is very woke. You know, the leadership, like in a lot of places, they don't really care about the population has to say. And yeah, they were trying to rename streets there. In fact, in Lexington, they even renamed New Market. Can you believe it? And for those of you out there, it's like, why would Lexington and those mayors want to rename a street called New Market? Well, because after all, that was one of the most famous, popular battles, deadliest battles that took place in Shenandoah Valley. Oh, it's because even though the Confederacy is outnumbered, they won that battle. They don't like any reminders of the Confederacy's success, which happens all the time. That's one of the reasons why they renamed buildings and the ship called Chancellorsville, because even though the South was outnumbered over 2-1, they won that one. They don't want any reminders, even the most important battles in America's history that took place. But being out there, I say that because they did that. Yeah, and those mayors out there, they even renamed Stonewall Cemetery. We still will forever. That's why we call it Dixie Forever. You know, it shouldn't change what they think. It's still Stonewall Cemetery to us, where Stonewall Jackson and many other important folks are buried. To us, it hasn't changed the fact. But being out there, overwhelmingly very supportive folks out there. And when you talk about flagging, that's why I keep, even though I've got a relatively small car, it's coming up on 200,000 miles, it's still making the rounds. I'm looking at the damage on the side of my car because I hit a deer on the way to Sharpsburg Battlefield last year. But I usually keep at least 100 18-inch stick flags in the back to leave that reminders around wherever I go. So always looking for those Confederate cemeteries. So some of those folks who will follow Dixie Forever saw I just was at a Confederate cemetery. I just found that by total chance. And I was going down the road. I always check out those historical markers, and I saw a Confederate cemetery. And I went down there, saw this Confederate cemetery. It was beautiful, and there was a battle flag out there. And a lot of you were upset because the battle flag was over the. See, they had the battle flag, and then the First National underneath it. And a lot of you were upset that it was, and I can understand that point. But whatever the case.
At least it's up. Hey, at least it's a battle flag and a First National. It's the proper flags. The order might be off. It happens. And that's part of the problem too. People don't always teach the proper use of the Confederate flag, how national first, then battle flag, and then all those little nuances. But at least someone tried. That's what matters.
Exactly. So you're traveling around, want to leave those flags around. And so I try to find a good discount for those. And so I always leave those around. I encourage you to do the same thing. Those of you out there listening, to keep flags in there. If you see a Confederate gravesite, leave it there. You never know what you'll find. Those might be there until they fall off, they fragment to pieces from the weather. That's possible. I've seen that happen. I left a flag at some cemeteries, and I returned there about 4 or 5 years later, and they're very, very faded and torn, but they were still there. Other times, yeah, maybe they're gone in a matter of a short time. But I'll do the same thing with county Confederate memorials in front of county courthouses, wherever it's at. And so what are they going to do if I leave a Confederate flag at a Confederate memorial right there on the county courthouse grounds? I've done that so many times. Never been an issue, never been a problem. Nobody's harassed me. Now I know they're looking. There's been times, in fact, not too long ago, I put a Confederate flag down by a Confederate memorial in front of the courthouse, and I went into the museum, and I went back out 20 minutes later. It was already gone after 20 minutes. But I've also put them out in front of county courthouses where I've returned a week later and they're still there and beyond, right? I saw you put one out in Orange County, right? I remember I went by there later, it was still there. Went by later, it was still there. And so I'm encouraging everybody, leave, Confederate memorial flags are important for everybody to see. They're part of our life. They're part of Americana. That's part of America. If you don't, and we always hear that thing, if you don't like America, leave it. So yes, Confederate history is American history, a very important part of American history.
And those are American flags, because y'all, another big thing, they call it the woke right, is we see it all the time. I was at one of the rallies, and I've been standing my ground for years. We had people that were quote Republicans, but they were, you know, Yankee, Lincoln era Republicans. And they said, you can't have that flag here. Well, guess what? It's a public space, my freedom of speech. I'm allowed to have whatever flag I want to have. And we argued about it. And when they said American flags only, well, guess what? That's an American flag because it was the CSA, Confederate States of America.
About American as a flag as you can get. I mean, in fact, it's far easier to argue that the Confederate battle flag is far more American than the federal flag was at the time.
Absolutely.
Right? Because as you look at those charts, the vast majority of those folks who were fighting the Confederate flag were multi-generational Americans that had lived here for a long, long time. A lot of those Federals were fresh off the boat, mercenaries basically.
From Germany.
I have this one book that on statistics, and it shows that most of those northern states most of those were fresh in that have just recently arrived. I don't think they really understood the concept. Their family weren't around during the founding of this nation. They don't really have a concept of what Southerners had, and it's far easier to argue that the Confederate battle flag is far more of an American flag than the federal U.S. flag is. So it's no surprise that when I made a brief mention in there that it's no surprise that many of the descendants of our founding fathers and close relatives support the Confederacy. And so, as mentioned before, you know, George Washington, for example, his closest relatives, pretty much every single able-bodied man who served, who was able to serve in the Confederacy. It's no surprise, right? He's a Virginian after all. I've traveled through Charlestown and where the big Washington graveyard is, and every single one of those able-bodied relatives of George Washington were Confederate veterans. Many of them died, and many of them were brutally handled by the Union soldiers when they came through there. Union were brutal to George Washington's relatives. You can read that as you go around Charlestown, West Virginia area, which used to be Virginia, of course. They talks about how Union soldiers came through there and looted and plundered and destroyed that area and just ransacked that area. And many of George Washington's closest relatives, his great-grandnephews, died. And I've been to multiple cemeteries where you can find the grave sites, many of George Washington's relatives who fought with the Confederacy that died or were killed during the war. And not just that, but of course, for example, one of my other favorite founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, right? Thomas Jefferson, someone, if next time, there's a reason why the gravesite right next to Thomas Jefferson at Monticello was a Confederate general. And not just any Confederate general, but the Secretary of War for the Confederacy, because he grew up with Thomas Jefferson. He was born and raised at Monticello. And so it's no surprise the gravesite right next to him is a Confederate general, the Secretary of War for the Confederacy. And it's also no surprise for those like my other favorite founding father, George Mason, the father of our Bill of Rights, that his grandson was the leader of the U.S. Senate at the time, and he became an ambassador for the Confederacy, and he was captured. And you can read about what the Union soldiers did to his house. They completely destroyed his house. And same with Patrick Henry, same with Francis Scott Key. And I just ran across an article not too long ago that says every single one of Francis Scott Key's descendants supported the Confederacy, because to them it was the exact same principles. And I think that's why, going back here, for those of you who's joining us, we're here in Georgetown, Delaware. And some people might wonder, well, what in the world is a Confederate memorial doing here in Delaware? Because after all, Delaware, we had a discussion about this earlier, was divided, right? It was pretty close. A couple people could have made the difference. Delaware may have joined the Confederacy if it wasn't just for a couple people. But it's no surprise that as many, a couple thousand perhaps, they're saying, like I said, between 300 to 3,000, or likely about 2,000, Delawareans recognize the constitutional validity of the South, recognizing that it's a mockery to have fought for American independence and not allow independence again. What a mockery to the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and everything we hold dear as Americans to not allow people their full free agency.
They knew in Delaware, and in Delaware there's skirmishes too. People forget that, and the barn talked more about that. There was two taverns, two more or less hotels. One was Union, one was Southern sympathizers, more or less Confederates. They had an actual brawl, and this was happening in several places in Delaware. There's a town in Delaware where another brawl happened. It was the citizens, more or less what happened similar to Baltimore. I don't think the mural is still there anymore depicting it, but it was written history that this was happening. The war tore apart families in Delaware like it did in Maryland, and also like it did in New Jersey. Because in New Jersey, we also have quite a few Confederates that, you know, were born in New Jersey. Some came from there. I gave my presentation today and I mentioned 2 of them. We discovered 2 more. One of them was a higher ranking official, and the other one was the governor at the time in 1862 in Arkansas. So the governor during the war between the states was born in New Jersey, and one of many, because New Jersey was a bizarre state. It was a Yankee state, but it very divided, a lot of Southern sympathizers. Part of the Mason-Dixon line goes through New Jersey. And then you also see areas like Princeton. Princeton was the hub of education for Southerners, much like Yale had a decent amount of Southerners as well. And Princeton had quite a few prominent families that went there, the McDowells, I believe Governor of Maryland at the time, other Breckinridge, I think, went to Princeton. And a lot of these great individuals served in higher ranking positions in the Confederacy.
Yeah, absolutely. So Vinny, before I forget, you know, a lot of folks used to watch you all the time. I used to watch you all the time on Monuments Across Dixie. Can you share with everybody right now where they can watch you and where to go and what you've been doing in the meantime? Because after all, you used to be much more active.
Yes.
We were both much more active. In my case, you know, a lot of those videos that you see on Monuments Across Dixie are the videos that I took, right? Now, my voice has been stripped off and they've replaced it with some like banjo music and things like that. So a lot of those videos. But Vinny used to have once, 2, maybe 3 times a week, he would have these videos. Can you just talk to everybody really quickly as we make a transition? Because we're going to make a transition. We'll go show you this monument here real soon, and it won't keep you too much longer.
Of course. So, all right, y'all, I missed a lot of y'all, and I am live on New Jersey Flaggers. We are on Twitter or X. We're on Facebook. And the best site to watch me on is on YouTube, and that's called Southern Media Company. We are in the process of uploading all the previous episodes of the Mason-Dixon podcast, or Unapologetic was the other segment I would do. We're still on there. I have 2 new commentators who will be joining us on there. So we're growing. We're in the process of revamping and, you know, rebranding. Part of it was Facebook, because Facebook was attacking everything. I couldn't go live. They attacked my personal Facebook, so I couldn't go live. And let's be real, y'all, this censorship has been ridiculous. X is much better than it was when it was Twitter. So on there, the Twitter Spaces or the X, we go on there and we do it from Monuments Across Dixie on X, New Jersey Flaggers on X, Southern Media Company on YouTube, and possibly on Facebook, Monuments Across Dixie, News and Travel. And those are the ways to find me.
Good to hear. You know, I made a lot of transition too. I avoided Twitter just like everybody else, but when it went to X, everything changed, right?
Much better.
Thank God for Elon Musk for recognizing, kind of, they say, saves censorship, because people were being banned and censored, hidden, shadow banned for the most trivial, littlest things, right? You could, I mean, you could, for just quoting the founding fathers or something, it was outrageous how bad it got. And so I'm sure you've done the same thing. That's why I made an effort as well to make a transition over to, well, I might as well, sharing these videos, sharing these photos, I might as well share them on, X. I might as well share them on TikTok. I did it on Instagram. And now doing 2 videos, basically this one on Facebook, because this Facebook one will be deleted in 30 days. But I have a second camera here for YouTube, and so that should remain indefinitely. And I wanted to make sure, because it's outrageous that we'd have a great conversation like this and have this great commentary from Vinny, and just to, it'd be, we want to keep this around for years and years, right? So that's why this is on YouTube as well. And that's why I'm glad you mentioned there's another place to hear your great commentary. And everybody needs to listen to Vinny. He's got so many great stories, and that's why I'm hoping we go around, because we could go around nonstop and hear more and more stories about Vinny. And he's much more interesting to listen to than I am, I think.
Oh, not at all. I listen to you all the time when I drive, because I learn new things, and you're a wealth of knowledge, and you know a whole bunch of stuff that I even didn't know. And you gave me a great refresher on the Confederate sniper.
Oh yes,
that gentleman who was
Jack Hinson. Yes,
Jack Hinson, because I remembered it. I'm like, I need a refresher, but we're the dynamic duo, and I would love to just get an RV and travel around the country.
Yes, and that's why I was asking you yesterday, because I wanted to go see Lookout Point, yeah, tomorrow.
Point Lookout. Yep,
Point
correct.
Lookout, thank you. It's been about a year since I've been there, and I keep that park, that POW camp for Confederacy, and there's, you know, I think about 3,500 that are buried there, something like that.
It's a lot. It's a sister monument. There's two monuments, and one of them was from the state, and the other one was from the government. The government one is a twin monument to the Jersey one.
Yes, and so that's worth mentioning. Over there in Point Lookout, there's a Confederate park right next to it, owned, thankfully it's private, and they just bought some more property, which is awesome, isn't it? And they have all the flags flying out there. They just put a new monument out there in Point Lookout. And this is once again on the very south side of Maryland, right after one of those Five Fingers, kind of, you know, so on the far east side of the country. But anyways, we'd love to get back out there again. But yeah, that obelisk out there at that particular one, it says this Confederate memorial was built by the United States government. It says that over at Finn Point too, and also that one in Illinois, and that one I went to in north side of Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, I meant to say. Yeah, thank you. Philadelphia. It's a terrible area of town. Boy, that's one of those.
It's the hood.
It's the hood, yeah. That particular cemetery is. But they have the Confederate Memorial out there because it's in the actual National Cemetery, right? There's a lot of sections, there's a lot of national cemeteries that have Confederate veterans.
That's right.
Right? There was a time there was a lot of respect, and there should be that respect, and that's what we're continuing this on. And so, but that obelisk over there is a reminder that in that particular cemetery, in Finn Cemetery, and we'll make a transition here real soon, there is, about 3,000 buried there, 2,500 or something, 3,000, and they're all unmarked graves.
Yes.
They're all unmarked graves, but thankfully they named all of those. I guess one of the benefits sometimes to have died in a POW camp is sometimes they at least had your name. At least you can do your ancestor name. So on all four sides around the obelisk there at Finn Point, that Confederate POW camp, although they're unmarked graves, at least their names are there, and there's a memorial saying this is a memorial to the Confederate soldiers who died in this camp, a monument made possible by the U.S. government. And there's several like that. Would you like to make a transition over here and take a look at this?
Let's go for it.
Let's do that. All right, so once again, for those of you who's joining us, we are this is Georgetown, Delaware County Historical Museum, basically. And basically there was a lot of buildings that were brought here and transported. So you can see in the background, you can see this church building off to here, which I think dates back to I think maybe 1890s right here. You can see the schoolhouse off in the background. The schoolhouse dates back to around that same period, 1890s. They just showed us about half the buildings inside, and I'll tell you what, if you are ever in this area, you gotta stop by and visit this place. Really good folks. The president here, the people are here, they appreciate their history, they appreciate American history, they appreciate war memorials like this that are very important, and they have got a lot of help for that. You can imagine, right? We had a lot of issues with the leadership of this town. The state delegates removed. They used to have funding. They used to, as I remember, they used to get about $10,000 or so a year. They pulled all that, and so they are running free of any support or sponsorship from Delaware. And it's just crazy that these people are forced to pay taxes, and that they're not even being supported for a museum.
And having a memorial at a museum. And right, that was the whole thing when this nonsense started. Put everything at a museum. This is at a museum, and apparently the Marxists don't like that. And I'll shock you all with this, because in New Jersey, big thing now is if museums want funding and grants, you know what they have to do in Jersey? They have to virtue signal to the CRT narrative. And as long as they're doing CRT and talking about the most egregious things that are ridiculous, they get that money. And the CRT, in order to get history in New Jersey, it has to be specific to slavery, so you have to find somewhere to tie in slavery. It has to be big on LGBTQ history somehow, so they can throw that in there. And any feminism approach. And more or less, those are the big ones that they will force you to talk about. You don't even have fun programs on history. Nothing on the weapons, nothing on the cannons anymore. Everything's about stuff that's really just the DEI, CRT nonsense, and very left-wing, very propaganda outright. And I was actually at several museums, and the lady was so dramatic in New Jersey. And she was going on in this museum going, oh, this happened, that happened. And I go, well, you know, that's not really what happened. And I almost gotten kicked out once because I spoke my mind.
You know, and those protesters you speak of, those are usually the most narrow-minded, simple-minded people. They're the most ignorant people you'd ever imagine. And it's another way of saying, tell me you were on public school and you slept through public school without telling me you went to public school.
The way that some of these people have acted, and I had the privilege to support Delaware, and I went to that meeting just to get an idea and show them, guess what, I'm here. I wore my SCV stuff. I said, we're not going nowhere. We're here, we're proud of our heritage. Deal with it. This monument's staying here. It's at a museum. The crowd that was there against that monument, they were yay big. A lot of them in their 80s and 90s. My one friend that joined me was in his 70s, and he said that he felt young. They were the most hateful people you could ever imagine. They claimed to be against hate. Guess what they were for? Destroying history. A lot of them were from New York City. And I wanted to say, move back to New York City and keep ruining that. Don't come down here to a beautiful historical state and say, like there was an example, there was a pillory, and Delaware was the last state that had public whippings, and they had the public whipping post. It's a part of history. Go up there, take pictures of it. It's cool. It adds that town feel. They were like, I'm so offended. It's the worst. I don't have anything to worry about in life, so I just want to destroy history. That's how they acted. They were hysterics. And I'm like, they really did all that. Destroyed history in Georgetown, just attacked it, ruined it. And then here they're trying to attack more history because they don't like it. And at what point is it going to end? Because guess what? They're now coming after founding fathers in New Jersey and in New York.
Yep. Well, it was up there in New Jersey that they removed the name of Thomas Jefferson from a school,
Correct.
Right? And they renamed it after a lady.
That's right.
A black lady. And what did she do?
Nothing.
She graduated from high school. Nothing. Basically the same thing. It's as ridiculous as the Henrietta Lacks, in my opinion.
And it's insulting in some ways. It's like graduated high school. Not even like, okay, college with some degree, which even then is ridiculous. The amount of just the virtue signaling is insulting, and it's pathetic.
It's
how anybody would be proud of something like that is beyond me.
I don't know how anybody supports that. It blows my mind. But it's another roundabout way of saying, so this is a museum, you know, the Georgetown, Delaware Historical Museum. And there are, if you're ever around this area, you got to stop by, because there are some just awesome artifacts and relics and displays. And
very nostalgic.
Yes. I'll tell you what, we just went into a building in a space off of an old warehouse type store. It was, I forget the name of that. Anyways, the store is still set up as though they're selling merchandise from around the late 60s, early 70s. It was awesome. I'm gonna share the video with you maybe next time I'm out here, but it's like walking back in time. And when a lady says, somebody, you know, it gets very emotional, because it's like looking at a store from the 60s and 70s as you remember it in your childhood. But an incredible display of trains over here, and HOG-sized trains that work. The world's largest frying pan. An incredible area over here. A blacksmith shop was great. There's a place over here for phones, all kind of phones, old artifacts. Just really impressive. So I love this place. There's a lot of times they'll have receptions, they'll have weddings over here. Schools come out here once in a while. Different things, apparently car shows here and there. It's an old little gas station over here. So definitely worth stopping here if you're ever in this part of Delaware. So, which is, once again, just south of Finn Point.
That's right.
And a lot of fascinating things too. So let's go take a look at this memorial. Once again, this is the Confederate memorial that was, well, it says right here in the front. It says in the front.
And that was just repainted, that beautiful battle flag insignia on the memorial was painted. And I put my wreath there. That is the memorial wreath on the ground, because I figured it would match that perfectly. I designed that from the New Jersey flaggers, and I did cotton, which by the grace of the heavens, I found 2 sprigs at Michael's. I'm gonna add more. I did red, white, and red, like the first national, and then I put the battle flag on it.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't notice that. That's fantastic. There was another wreath out here a little bit earlier.
That's right.
And it says right here, erected by the United Daughters of Confederacy, the Caleb Ross Chapter 2635 as Sons of Confederate Veterans, Delaware Camp 2068. And on all four sides, the names of those from this area, of those people who served in the Confederacy in the South. I love it. Hey, how you doing?
We're checking on you.
What's that?
We're checking on you.
Yeah, exactly.
You can say you've stopped at the 100th anniversary of the phone company museum.
Oh,
so
thank
that's
you.
our challenge coin for that.
Thank you for that, sir.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Look forward to
it's all yours now.
Thank you, for at least for the night.
Yeah.
Thank you, love it. We'll see you again next time.
All right, see you, bud.
Now we just we're talking to a gentleman who gave a wonderful, took us through some of the buildings. Loved it. All right, did you want to make some more comments about this? I was just mentioning that here's on all four sides, what they have done is they have engraved the names of those. This is some of those roughly 2,000, maybe up to 3,000 people from Delaware who served in the Confederacy. Now, this is a living monument memorial, and similar to some others I've seen, like for example, King George, where originally they engraved all the names of all those who served in King George. And then several years later, they realized, well, they missed a lot of names. And so later on, they added another 100 names in a different part of the monuments. But it's very clear and distinct which ones are new. But this is a living monument. As people do their ancestry, as they do their family trees, as they do their research, they find more people who served. They might as well add their names to it. And so you can see how there's a lot of room for expansion right here, where they can add these names.
That's right. And the bottom, the sides, and a lot of them are fresh. So every year this has been going on, a new name is added. This originally was just a smaller piece. This was added recently. The back one is all civilians, and it tells some of their stories. There's Confederate Cross of Honor insignia on there, where they were from. And the name that was added recently is William Bellingham, who was a dentist in the area and served with the 3rd Battalion Virginia Reserves Archers Brigade.
Yeah, this is the newest one, just added just a couple weeks ago.
That's right.
So all these names, don't you appreciate it when people care about
Civilians,
the veterans, those who served, many that are buried in unmarked graves, unknown locations. So this may be this is the equivalent of their headstone, in a way, in many ways, right? This is the only place you can find their names. As I've traveled around, I've talked to some of the historians in the town. They say, sometimes people travel from all the way across the country to go see if their ancestor's name, or go see their ancestor's name on the side of a Confederate memorial. And there's a lot of Confederate memorials that are just like this in a way, that their names are engraved on all four sides. Because typically across the South, as I've noticed, I really like those counties that list and engrave the names of all those who served and those who served and died. And they'll engrave their names on maybe some plaques or on the side of walls, and from all the wars. And sometimes you might see, some names for those who served in the American Revolution, and you see the names of those who served in maybe Korea and Vietnam and the Spanish-American War and World War I and World War II and Iraq and so forth. And typically across the South, there's about often 3 to 4 times more names of those who served in just that one war in the Confederacy than every other war combined. That puts in perspective. So when people say, oh, the Confederacy lasted 4 years, my Doritos lasted longer, how shallow and cruel, how disgusting that is, to compare America's largest, bloodiest, deadliest war and the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Americans to some food or something.
Uneducated nonsense. And it just goes to show you, when they say stuff like that, you ignore it. It's uneducated. These are people that probably don't know how to write cursive, can't read a book, don't know which bathroom to use, don't even know how to think properly, can't function in the real world, can't write a check, probably live in mom's dad's basement. And then when you say, oh, get a job, they freak out and yell. And that's what I've pretty much learned, and not even worth your time. And I've come to the conclusion that a lot of people agree to disagree, and that's it. And I said, guess what? Monument's staying here. My heritage is staying here. I got the Confederate tattoo. I am a living, breathing monument to my ancestors and my heritage. And guess what? That ain't going nowhere.
Love it. And that's one of the reasons some people say, well, why don't you delete trolls? Well, yeah, I do delete trolls, especially if they are personal and they attack friends and they get too much in depth. We don't want to tolerate any of that. But I can't see them all at the same time. But at the same time, sometimes I think, well, they are providing free advertising and they make fools of themselves. They look like absolute ridiculous, stupid children often. So a lot of times I'll keep them around because they just seem so narrow-minded, so ignorant. So continuing on here, you can see what they did here. And I've seen this sometimes on other Confederate memorials. I just saw one not too long ago. There was one I just posted about it in Dixie Forever. It was in West Virginia, in Moorfield, West Virginia. And the memorial said, well, this is to strangers too, because they didn't know who they were. And sometimes it's civilians. And in this case, they have civilians. And this is the Southern sympathizers, for example. For example, this one, Atkinson. William A. Atkinson was a Southern sympathizer. He was a pre-war sheriff, a post-war Delaware congressman, and so forth. And this side. So they decided to take that approach to also include the regular civilians.
That's right.
And so you see on all four sides the names of those from Delaware here. And you can see it once again on the bottom, erected by the United Daughters Confederacy, Caleb Ross Chapter, and the Sons of Confederate Veterans, Delaware Grays Camp. And they just had their meeting here today. And there is one of the wreaths that was left over from today, made possible by Vinny, being creative. So thank you, Vinny, for doing that.
You're welcome, y'all.
Do you want to walk this way and we'll finish this up? There is a little display right here as well. It's this display, and maybe I'll show this to you really quickly. This display right here says, to the Delaware citizens who fought for the South.
And just so y'all know some cool history, she was a wonderful governor of Delaware. First female governor of Delaware, Ruth Minner. She knew her roots. She was proud of her Southern roots because she had, farming family, agrarian family. This was as much as her heritage from the state. So she stood by this 110%, was not ashamed of this flag or monument, never denounced it. She unfortunately passed on, I believe like 2 years ago around. And the then now Governor Carney, but he was then the vice, governor or lieutenant governor of Delaware, had no problem with this monument at all. So it just shows you that this monument was nonpartisan. People of any affiliation, regardless of that, came together to honor their state history and honor their, USA history and their Southern history, and they weren't ashamed of this. This only came out recently when it was the cool thing to do to get a vote. Yeah. But Governor Minner, she never sold her soul. She always was behind this memorial and was just a fantastic lady.
There was a time this was not a partisan thing at all.
That's right.
I mentioned there's a big difference between liberals and leftists, and there was a time that even liberals can relate to this, and there was a time that you'd find the hippies and others can relate to the meaning of the battle flag. In the sense that they can identify with the idea of being independent, not being pushed over, not being rebels, not being felt like they've been pushed and that the government doesn't have control over them, that they can be separate and they can live their own life separate of the government. And so people can recognize this. That's why it's called the rebel flag often. But you can see I'm just sharing this with you real briefly, and we'll go ahead and finish this video up. But this right here speaks about more than those served. This comment right here, estimates of the number of Delawareans who had enlisted with Confederate units came from a recap of the war by Union generals ranged from anywhere from 300 to 3,000 men. Speaks right here about everyone wanted a peaceful solution, even if it meant allowing the southern states to break away. Delaware, as was mentioned, was very much of the attitude of, if the South wants to leave, just let them go.
That's right.
Why should we interfere? They had very much the attitude of not being in your face and confrontational. They are very much, if the South wants to leave, like for South Carolina, who voted 169-0 to go ahead and depart, who are we to tell these folks 1,000 miles away what they should do? Who is it? Why should we force them to live under our rule in our world? It's the same thing. You think of it today. If California voted right now, to go ahead and separate because
Let 'em
they
go.
hate the president, you know, us Southerners will say, okay, go ahead. We don't want to stop you.
Let them go and do it. Same with New York. And this is secession is as American as it can get. Let them go in peace. Let them leave. The fact, and this is my own opinion, right? My own personal opinion. I've had people say, oh, let's get Greenland or Canada. No, we don't want it. And I sent them a stark warning. I said, when you enter this union, y'all better get ready, because you enter the union, there is no way out. No more imperialism. Greenland has their own culture. They have their own flag, much like in the South we have our own American flag. My personal third national. Canada has their own flag, their own culture. That's why I'm dead against that. And if anything, start determining what states want to have their own, countries again.
Absolutely. I'll tell you what, Vinny, I've loved this.
Me too.
So cool. We'll do this as often as we can. We did this once before in the Shenandoah Valley.
We did. That's right, in Harrisonburg.
We went to Harrisonburg. We went to a few of those spots around there, and we'll try to do that as often as possible. But we both are working. We're both busy, and so we find moments like this, right? But anyways, love his commentary. So once again, share it on Facebook. Also, it's on YouTube. In this case, Dixie Forever. Once again, this is Cousin Vinny.
Cousin Vinny.
As you know, once again, encourage you to listen to him. Earlier on this video, he shared with you how you can contact him, where he presents, and the organizations he's involved in. So I encourage you to get involved. So thank you.
You're welcome,
Loved it.
and thank you for all your hard work. And RJ's amazing. He gets out there. He does a lot of good stuff, and he inspires me to be my best me and get out there, get more active. I did take out my left leg, so it recovered, and getting back on my feet, getting back out there. Hope to do something in Illinois. And as you know, I always like to say, long live the South.
Long live the South. So God bless y'all. Take care, y'all. May God bless America. May God bless and save Dixie.
That's right. Deo Vindice.
Deo Vindice.